So, my guest today is Michael Spencer, a home energy coach and Reiki practitioner who helps soulful, sensitive people declutter their homes to create space for what truly matters. She is the creator of a high vibration method of decluttering called Home Energy Purification, which incorporates intuition, mindfulness, and energy work into the process. Michael is the founder of Let's Purify, and her online coaching business is called the same, and the host of Let's Purify podcast, which is how I found Michael, actually. And so, Michael, I would love to know how clearing your home and making space in it can be done through your authenticity and your inner wisdom.
Oh, yeah. Such a great question. And thanks for having me here. I'm really excited. I've been listening to some of the armchair talks, and I'm honored to be part of this.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So let's see. That's sort of a broad question, and I'll try to answer it as best I can. So the belongings that we choose to have in our homes really reflect who we are. You know, they reflect what's important to us, what we value. And sometimes we can have things that gather in our homes that don't really reflect that truth anymore, that don't reflect the authenticity that we're really wanting to vibrate outwards from our hearts. So this may be belongings that get collected in an attic or a basement or in the back of a closet, or, you know, in the back of a drawer. And sometimes it's even things that we're living with in our spaces. You know, maybe it's a photo that's hanging on the living room wall that doesn't really truly resonate with us. And so when we bring our attention to the belongings in our homes, to these objects, and we bring mindfulness and we bring our intuition to the process, we shift from something that we might call decluttering, which is just this sort of process. It's like, okay, I'll just like get a dumpster and get rid of everything, which isn't a very soulful type of process. And it's not really helping us to anchor in to the truth of ourselves. When we bring a different energy and a different awareness to the process, it truly is all about exploring in depth, what is it that I truly want to carry with me in my life, and what are the things that I want to reflect my inner being, you know, outside in my spaces.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a high level overview. So I'd love to know what your questions are and where we can go a little bit more in depth.
Well, I love the way that you describe that, because we've spoken before, and I'm about to go through a process of completely going through my house, because I'm going to be moving to a new space. And I looked at different types of decluttering, because actually I'm very tidy. But I have a lot of stuff, and I think that I need it all. So this idea of authenticity in moving is really interesting to me, because I know the kind of life that I'm creating and that I'm envisioning. And it's how to streamline what I have and only take really what fits in with that, because at the moment I imagine everything fits in with that, but it doesn't. Sure. So I'd love to know how you help somebody do that streamlining process.
Yeah, I think what really, there are a couple of factors that can be very helpful in that process. Number one is really creating the time and space to sit with this. It's a very experiential process. And if we don't allow ourselves the time and space to really be with and kind of feel the energy of the different belongings that we're sitting with, it can get kind of overwhelming and frustrating and very confusing, because it's like, oh, there's so much stuff, and we can get caught up in feeling like there's not a lot of time. And so it really is important to carve out what I might call sacred space for this process. And so that might mean, as you're sitting with a box of items, or you're sitting with a shelf, and you're determining, like, okay, I only have so much space in my new home, what really wants to travel with me? You might sit and you might do a short, 3-minute, 5-minute meditation. You might offer a prayer. You might send Reiki to these belongings and to your higher self for clarity. And it's amazing, when we give ourselves that sacred space, even just as I'm talking about it, I can feel the muscles in my shoulders sort of like, okay. And I can feel this sense of clarity already kind of anchoring in within me. And so when we bring that to the process of sorting through our belongings, it can really help. And it's so simple. It only takes a few minutes. Another thing that can be really helpful is to connect with some questions that can help you to really clarify what is most important to me. And so there may be questions, there can be very practical questions like, do I have multiples of this object? And if so, do I need to take all of them along? So they can be practical. And then it can also be things like, does the energy of this object resonate with the vision of what I'm creating? So, whether it's because you're moving into a new home, or maybe you're doing a remodel, or you're just in a place of spiritual and personal self-exploration. And so it's like, okay, I'm moving into a new phase. Does this object support where I'm heading? And so that might be something, maybe we're holding on to something from a past career, a past relationship. Yeah. And I think the most beautiful thing about this purification work is that we can start and maybe have an assumption like, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm going to take that houseplant along, or I'm pretty sure I'm going to take this set of books or whatever. And there are times when we sit with and we get clear and we allow our intuition to speak to us, and we allow the energy of whether it's a vision of where we're heading or just the energy of an object itself. And there's this like, oh no, this needs to go, in this way that if we don't create that sacred space and we don't have some sense of, where we're heading, we may just take things that don't truly light up our hearts or resonate with where we're heading.
I love that you talk about where we're heading, because it hadn't really occurred to me, because I guess that it's not just where we're physically heading sometimes, it's where we're emotionally heading as well.
Yes. Yeah. I think our emotional and spiritual and energetic evolution, all of it. Yeah. And I think it all fits together. And that's so often reflected in our homes.
Yeah.
Do I have a space in my home that's dedicated to meditation or self-contemplation? And it doesn't only have to be about that. If there's someone who loves cooking, they love cooking food, they love sharing food. What is surrounding you in your kitchen?
Yeah.
Is it obvious that that's a place that you love to be in? And these are.
I was going to say that's the same with me with my office, for example.
Yeah.
It's the place that I come to sew, read, contemplate, work, create. And what I have in here is only what completely supports that. So I guess what you're saying is that when you start looking at your things, you need to look for that feeling inside, the feeling inside that sort of comes up first, rather than certainly not our personal thinking.
Right. Yeah, it is going a few levels deeper than that, or expanding beyond that. And I think that, that personal thinking can certainly serve the process. And when we get deeper into that intuitive place, things just become so much more clear in that decision-making process, because then we're getting out of that ping pong, like, oh, I should keep this, or, well, what are my family members going to think if I choose to let go of this? What does society and culture think if I choose to let go of this? And we can get so caught up in our heads, we're not really creating space for that inner truth. And I think that's really where that authenticity comes in. Because the authenticity isn't here. Our authentic truth is not what I think I'm supposed to be
in our head.
Right. It's much deeper.
Yeah.
I'll give a quick example. When I was doing my full home energy purification process, which my work was then born out of, I was in my clothes closet and my wedding dress was hanging there. And I did not feel a connection to this dress. I'm happily married. My wedding was a beautiful one. We had a great time. And I didn't feel a connection to this dress. And I also felt like I was supposed to hold on to it. Culturally, like, we get the dress cleaned and preserved, and then we hold on to it forever. I can remember my mother trying on her wedding dress every couple years and like taking pictures. And so, I had these ideas from culture, from family, and I'm like, I don't want this. My dress had a red wine stain on it, and I knew I was never going to wear it again. And so I started, I sort of had to make peace with, and this is where, this is one example among many, that we get to gain that clarity. I knew my truth was, I don't want to hold on to this. And so again, when we come back to that sense of authenticity, it's making those decisions. So we can know what we want, what our authentic being wants. We can know that all day long. If we don't act on it, we're not really honoring that. And we're not saying that's what's most important. We're saying, no, I'll go with what my mom says, or what family says, or, what my husband says, or what pop psychology says. And so it's a very brave act to go, you know what? And like what you're doing, I'm going to let go of a lot of my things and move into a much smaller place. That's exactly where my heart knows I need and want to be. That's what this work is all about.
And I noticed something, and I don't think I knew this really deeply until I started listening to your podcast, actually. And I realized that I've always known that I have a deep need for security, financial and emotional, most definitely. And I'm much better at that now, but I think it might always be, a part of who I am. But I realized when I was thinking about clearing some bits and pieces out, and especially clothes and things, that actually all of this that I hold on to and have too much of is about security. And when I knew that I was literally flipping my life upside down and going to make a massive change, that was the moment that I started the first thought of letting go of my security. And now it's easier to think about, letting go of a lot of the things that I love. For example, I love tea services. I love dining services. I love having people for dinner. I have about 5 lovely sets that I change all the time, and I really feel attached to them. There's no way I can take 5 sets. Right. So I have to be able to, cut that down. But yeah, I would imagine that when you've worked with people, do you notice that a lot of the things that they're trying to move past are things like security?
Absolutely. And I think that's where, and like you're saying, like you discovered some of that through the podcast, and we can have these notions of, our stuff just being our stuff, and absolutely our relationship with our stuff, because we are these spiritual beings here in these bodies, and we need a certain amount of stuff to survive. know, we need shelter and we need things to be able to express ourselves on the planet. And sometimes that can get skewed, and we can really be leaning into the material stuff a little bit more than leaning in, you know, to that place within.
Yeah.
Where we go, okay, where does true security come from? Because it doesn't come from those, you know, 5 tea sets or 5 dinner services, you know, just to use that example in a really gentle way. You know, it doesn't come from all my family pictures back there.
Yeah.
You know, because any of that can go at any time.
Yeah. It, you know, and so within us.
Right. And so it's this very brave work, you know, and what you're doing, it's so brave to sit with these things that you love, and you're doing it in service of evolving into this new, you know, you're choosing to move from a bigger house to a smaller dwelling space. And it's, that choice is so on purpose, and it is pushing you to get clear and make these decisions. And it is bumping up against that security notion.
Yeah, that's so true. And there when I see the purpose, the deep purpose actually, in downsizing things to meaningful things, you know, that I take with me. And because it actually frees up my life in a way that I can spend more time being present and experiencing my spiritual life that I want to. It's really important to me. And I realize that having a lot of things in the back of this mind, my personal thinking mind, has been sort of at times full of stuff. And when I clear things, I get much more clarity. But my inner wisdom has been saying for a very long time that, you know, I can feel almost the pressure of the things, even though I have an incredibly tidy house, as my friends would tell me. But I just knew that these things were just stopping the flow of where I wanted to go with my life. So it's quite a difficult thing to explain to people.
Sure. Yeah. And it's beautiful that you have that clarity and you're moving forward, whether others understand it or not.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Do you find at the end of the process, when people do that, go through your program with you, do you find that they clearly become more authentic? They're clearly more in touch with who they are? And do you really see that they've dropped a lot of their personal beliefs?
Absolutely. As people go through this program, and the program has a kind of a pretty detailed step-by-step written program, and then we have coaching sessions where we meet on a pretty regular basis, about weekly. And when they go through those exercises, because it's not just information, you know, it's a lot of self-exploration exercises. The people who go through this program find themselves becoming more clear about like things that they may have not thought of. You know, when you have things that have been stored down in a basement or in an attic or in the back of a closet for decades, we're not consciously thinking about that.
No.
It gets stuffed in there, and then maybe we move and we go, oh, we just have to take all this stuff out of storage and then put it in storage over here. And this program encourages people to go through as much. My way is like, let's go through everything.
Yeah.
Because it's a really thorough process, and there's no rules. You know, if somebody's like, I don't need to go through the stuff in that shed right now, then don't. You know, you do what. That's where like the authenticity really comes through too. Like, you know what's best for you. And when people use the mindfulness and the grounding techniques to sit with the discomfort of having to make decisions, clear decisions about things. And it is not about letting go of everything. purifying is not about, getting rid of 50% of your stuff or becoming minimalist, unless that's what you choose to do. It's about getting very clear about what you hold on to, why, how it's serving you, if it's serving you. And that can be a very uncomfortable process,
Yeah.
And so when we choose to stay, when we choose to be grounded, when we choose to feel that anxiety, that, because we can be holding on to things that are connected to old trauma, that are connected to old beliefs that are very uncomfortable. When we choose to make a clear decision, you can't help but blossom in that authenticity. Because you're saying yes to opening up a channel of truth.
Yeah.
By saying, yes, this is extremely important to me. I love this. I want to keep traveling with this object. Or I don't know what the consequences are going to be of letting go of this, but I cannot hold on to it one more moment. I cannot have this energy in my home.
I love what you said about traveling with it. Thinking about, do I want to travel with this?
Yeah.
Because, that's a really nice thought. I love that, especially for me. And what interests me is that when I moved to my present home 3 years ago, I did let a lot of stuff go. That anything in my loft that I had, I didn't put it in a loft here. It went. So, but what I realized was, Michael, is that when you let something go, I can guarantee very soon after that, you never think about it again. And people, hold on to things and things that are in their loft or basement that they haven't looked at for years. It has been out of your conscious mind.
Right.
And it's something that you don't think about once you've moved on. It's just, you let it go, you live in the present.
Right. And that's part of the practice too, and it's interesting when things are out of our conscious mind because they're in storage somewhere, energetically, they're still right here, and if we're holding on and carrying unconsciously, we're also carrying that baggage, whether we're conscious of it or not. And so there is something freeing about making that clear decision.
Yeah.
And saying, yes, I'm going to let go of this. And something that I run into with clients sometimes is the fear that they will regret letting go of something.
Yeah.
So kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, because I know I've experienced that so much, Marion, where I've let go of something and I don't think about it again.
Yeah.
Like, bye, and people have come to me and said, I've let go of stuff and then I just immediately regretted it, or 6 months later I've regretted it. How do I make peace with that? If I know in the moment that I need to let go of something, how do I face that? Like, oh, what if I regret it in the future? And that's part of purifying. It's a brave and courageous act to say, right now, I know I need to let go of this. And I recognize there's a chance that I may go, oh. And so it's a development of faith and a trusting in the abundance of the universe, that even if we let go of something and later we realize we need it again, that need will be met. We'll be able to meet that.
I love that, because what people fall into, I believe, is the trap of guilt. And guilt doesn't have any place in this.
No.
It is about the letting go. And if it so happens that later on I need something, then, as you said, my needs will be met. Yes. And I'm sure that my son will find a way of giving me a Christmas present or something that will match that need. But yeah, it is this guilt. People imagine they're going to have this terrible guilt of letting things go, and I'm sure that some people do. But it's the security thing again, because if you have an issue with security, then you always imagine that you're going to need something in the future and are going to feel guilty about it.
Right. And so and I feel like there's a connection here with authenticity, is when we allow ourselves to experience our emotions, and to just experience things directly. So we're dropping some of the filters of, I'm going to regret this, I'm going to regret this.
Yeah.
And we let go, and then we actually notice what is truly happening here. And I feel like that's another form of being in our authenticity, is like, what's truly happening here? Not what I expect to happen, not what I'm worried about is going to happen. What is my direct experience? Oh, I thought I was going to regret this. I actually feel really free.
Yeah.
Well,
the way that I deal with things is that if I make a decision and it's a really honest and truthful decision, my intention is right in the moment, then if I find later on that I will need something, then that's something that I needed then. It's not something that I needed now. So I don't feel guilty about letting things go.
Right.
Because I did the right thing in that moment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it is truly trusting,
yes,
that moment to moment awareness. I love that.
So before we finish, and it's been great talking to you about this, it's so insightful, I love it. What advice would you give somebody who is really getting that sort of knowing inside that they need to do something about making space, whether physically or just internally?
Yeah, I would say to begin, I did a podcast episode on micro areas. And so it doesn't have to be, cleaning out an entire room. It can be, let me sit with the belongings on this shelf. Let me sit with the belongings in this box, in this basket, and just getting a taste of it. Like, what does it feel like to feel into my truth and get a sense of, do I want this belonging? Do I want to let it go? Just beginning somewhere. And
is there a difference between, you said, do I want it or not want it? There has to be more of a feeling that lets you know that you really want that.
Yeah, I definitely encourage people to feel into their body, into their intuition, because it is definitely beyond that simple, like, want, don't want. And sometimes the decision can be made from that level. I think where doing some grounding work, and as well as some type of spiritual or sacred entry point into the process. So you're not just like ripping the lid off a box and just like, it's getting really clear. And so your eyes can be very open to seeing, your ears can be very open to hearing.
Yeah.
Is this something that's contributing to my life?
Yeah, I love that. Contributing.
Yeah. And I think each person finds their own rhythm and vibration with it. I also definitely think of things in terms of vibration. And so if a person is kind of that persuasion, if you will, that they're interested in the energy of things, it's feeling that. Does this item resonate with who I am, with who I'm becoming?
Yeah.
Which is, that's a different quality than, do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I want it? Do I not want it?
Yeah, that's really clear. And I should be starting mine doing exactly that.
Wonderful. That's so exciting.
So thank you so much, Michael. And if anybody wants to know and meet Michael and participate in what Michael has to offer, you have the Let's Purify website, don't you?
Yes, it's letspurify.energy.
Great.
And I also, the podcast is on there, and the podcast can be found at pretty much all the podcast apps. It's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all of that. And
it's a great podcast, and I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was wonderful, Marion. Thanks for having me.
That's a pleasure.
Thank you.